Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition and and Star Trek Lower Decks, and what Star Trek Lower Decks teaches the Dungeons and Dragons community, the Dungeons and Dragons DMs and the Dungeons and Dragons players about canon. Canon is incredibly important, and canon is a major question in every serious intellectual property. So what I want to talk about today is I want to talk about mega intellectual properties. Mega intellectual properties include DC Marvel. They include Star Trek Star Wars. They include Fast and Furious 9. I know you don't like to hear that, but that is, there are 10 movies, right? It's a multi-billion-dollar property. It's got television shows based on it, all kinds of things like that. And also Harry Potter, question mark? We don't really know if Harry Potter is actually a major intellectual property anymore. I think the PlayStation 5 game was recently canceled, and it doesn't look like it really doesn't look like there's going to be any more new product coming out for Harry Potter. Please correct me if I'm wrong there, but I don't see anything major. A lot of the current HP properties are looks like they're getting canceled, right? So I think that has to do with some issues that J.K. Rowling is having. Just some opinions she's expressed has made it so that a lot of companies aren't interested in working with the HP IP, the Harry Potter IP. But Star Trek hangs on, right? And what's really fascinating is Star Trek has two new ongoing series, which are Star Trek Discovery and also Star Trek Picard. Okay. In addition to that, it just came out with a new show called Lower Decks. Now, Star Trek Lower Decks is very unusual for Star Trek. So Star Trek Lower Decks is animated, okay? Star Trek Lower Decks is also called a comedy. It is tagged as a comedy, okay? But what's really interesting about Star Trek Lower Decks is how it deals with canon, right? And how it adds to canon and how it really adds to canon, right? So let's talk about this. This is truly incredible. So basically, let's talk real quick on why Star Trek Lower Decks was actually, in my opinion, made. So one of the reasons why I think Star Trek Lower Decks was made was the Orville. So Orville, there's 2 seasons of the Orville. It's absolutely fantastic. It arguably is as faithful to. Here's the other issue. So Star Trek Discovery is on right now, but it's one of those DC situations. Most Star Trek fans that I have talked to don't really consider Star Trek Discovery as a continuation or within Star Trek canon, and the reason why is it's one of those DC. DC is notorious for having terrible content with their DC shows, and actually not their DC shows, with their movies, because generally the people that they hire don't care about comic books or DC, and there's no respect for the source material, right? So basically, and you could see that all over DC, right? Like, people want a sequel to Joker, starring Joaquin Phoenix, and so they want that, right? But like, that property has nothing to do with the new Batman movie that's coming out. They're completely disconnected, right? So it's a hot mess, right? So Orville was made by Seth MacFarlane. It was a live-action parody of Star Trek that was incredibly faithful to the Star Trek canon. Like, it was incredible. And I think it infuriated Paramount, because they were like, hey, these guys are eating our lunch making a Star Trek comedy. Why don't we make a Star Trek comedy? So they did make a Star Trek comedy. Here's what gets strange. I just watched Star Trek Lower Decks. It was incredibly good, but it wasn't funny, right? In 10 episodes, I laughed out loud once, and I snickered twice, right? In 10 episodes, right? But I love the show. And the reason why is the person who made the show, who was a producer on Rick and Morty and on Solar Opposites, I think his last name is McMahon. I think it's David McMahon. But he very clearly is a massive fan of the show and has incredible respect for the source material, right? So where you've landed is you have a live action show, Star Trek Discovery, that's supposed to be Star Trek canon, that is rejected by, in my opinion, by many, if not most, Star Trek fans, right, as saying it doesn't even fit into canon. And then you have a show that was never intended to be canon that is far more canon than the non-comedy show, right? It's incredible, right? And so, basically, where do we land with this with Dungeons & Dragons? Well, with Dungeons & Dragons, it needs to reach the level where it can have these kind of problems, right? So one, Star Trek has many movies and it has many shows, right? And it has so many shows that it can even absorb a comedy about the show that is within official canon and incredibly faithful to canon. And it's arguable that the comedy show actually adds to the Star Trek's Lower Deck comedy show, in my opinion, without a doubt, adds to Star Trek canon far more than Star Trek Discovery, right? So, and that's the issue is, I'm always saying we need to grow, we need to scale, D&D needs to be bigger. And the reason why is the success that Star Trek enjoys, right? Star Trek is key to the launching of Paramount Plus, which is a major contender as a mega streamer, right? D&D could be the same. D&D could be the content that draws people to an existing streamer or actually props up a new startup streamer, right? Not more than props up, but bolsters and serves as a foundation, right? So we really can never forget we're not there with D&D. A lot of people are very happy with where D&D is now. There's no reason in the world Star Trek should be bigger than Dungeons & Dragons. Dungeons & Dragons is a better platform, and it deserves that kind of level of success where it can have issues where it can have problems where people debate what is more if the current live stream, if the current live action is actually non-canon and the animated comedy is canon, because that's exactly what I'm saying. I would love for D&D to get there where it could actually have those type of canon debates. Let's keep hoping that the Dungeons & Dragons movie delivers. Well, that's my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.